If you're thinking of moving to Boise, Idaho, the suburb that you choose to move to is the most important part of moving here. It can determine whether you love moving to Boise, Idaho, or you completely regret your move here. So today I'm going to give you quick guides on the absolute essentials of each suburb so that you know whether you should learn more about and dive deeper into a suburb, or you shouldn't waste your time learning more about it. I'm also going to make it easier on you guys, and I'm going to rank every single suburb and stay for the end where I rank my absolute top suburb that for years has been absolutely overlooked. Okay, the first city that we're going to talk about just gives you guys a baseline, so it is going to be Boise. But before we go into Boise, this channel is a channel for those of you who are or are thinking of moving to Boise, Idaho, and I am here to completely just educate you guys. I want you guys to figure out whether Boise is actually going to be right for you, or if you shouldn't have it on your list of places to move to. So that's what this channel is about. I am a real estate agent. I am also a Boise local. And so I have lots of unique insights, and my goal here is to build relationships with people, whether you guys end up moving here and buying a house with me or not. My goal is to be with you every step of the way, and I don't pass you off to any other agents. You get to work with me. If you guys watch my videos and take all this time to earn my trust, then you deserve to work with me, not any other agents on my team. So that's the channel. Subscribe to not miss any other videos, but let's get into these quick guides on each and every suburb. The first one being Boise. Boise is obviously the main city, so it's not a suburb, but still want you guys to have an understanding of if it will fit for you. So the first thing is location. So Boise is about 15 minutes from Eagle, it's 15 minutes from Meridian, and then there's different aspects of Boise. You have South Boise, West Boise, the Bench, and then the downtown area, and then Southeast Boise out by Micron. The homes in Boise are a wide range of different home styles and prices, but in general, Boise is going to be on the more expensive side of things, especially if you want to live in and around downtown, with the median home value being around $500,000 if you average out all of the different sections of Boise. If you're getting closer to downtown, you're pretty much in the $700,000 ranges for most people moving here. But that's a little bit of a generalized statement. You can find homes in Boise, especially South Boise, for $350,000, $360,000, $370,000, but average out to $400,000 and $500,000 probably in the South Boise area, the Bench, and West Boise. But those are the less nice parts of Boise. The taxes in Boise are also going to be higher than every other suburb for the most part. You get a lot of levies related to the school districts, so your tax rates are going to be from 0.7% to about 1.2%, depending on which part of Boise. But I'd say on average, you're mostly going to be at about 1.1% versus the other suburbs that we talk about in this video are going to be a lot lower. When it comes to the other cost of living in Boise, it's going to be the same for pretty much every suburb. I'll touch on that in each of one of them, but your taxes are going to be the same. Your utilities are going to be about the same, $300, $400, $500 a month, depending on which size of home and how much you utilize each utility. But the lifestyle and the overall feel of each suburb is going to be the most important part. So with Boise, the lifestyle is for those people who really want to be close to all of the action. You want to be in the downtown area. You want to be next to all of the big events, the stadiums, the BSU games, the comedians that come in, the big concerts that come into town. You want to be able to walk to the grocery store or at least have a 5-minute drive. You want the busyness. You want nightlife. The other side of Boise that's lifestyle is for those of you who want the outdoor amenities. Boise is one of the only places, other than a couple, but Boise has the most outdoor amenities when it relates to the Greenbelt, hiking trails, walking, the Boise River, floating that. There is also a whitewater park. There's lots of ponds in Boise. You have the foothills for mountain biking. You have Bogus Basin Ski Resort, which is only 30 minutes or 25 minutes, depending on how fast you drive, from the city of Boise itself, versus the suburbs, you're going to be moving 15, 20 minutes out. So as far as lifestyle goes, if you're somebody who does want to be close to everything, you want all of the outdoor amenities really close to you, then Boise is going to be one of your top suburbs to look more into and find out more details, because again, in this video, I'm just doing quick guides to give you guys the basic punchlines of everything you need to know, and what I see working with people on a daily basis are the types of people that would prefer to live in each and every one of these suburbs. The other side of Boise is a lot of you guys are moving here for political reasons. So the city of Boise is going to be much more on the liberal side than the other suburbs. I'd say it's probably the only suburb that is leaning more towards the liberal side, and that is because we have a Democratic mayor, just as a sign of the Democratic way, because there's no other way to physically show it, but there is pride flags all over downtown Boise and businesses. The city of Boise had it up at the Capitol because of the mayor. And so it is apparent, and because of the university, and I know a lot of you, that is important, and it is a part of the city of Boise. And so it's good to know about those things and the type of people that you want to be around. If you're somebody that is more on the liberal Democratic side and you want to be near people that have those same beliefs, then Boise is going to be a better fit. The other cultural side is there is a lot of community in the city of Boise in a different way. So you have Basque communities, you have Democratic communities, you have a lot of college communities, and there's just a lot more people, with the population being at about 253,000 people in the city of Boise. So there's just going to be a lot more of those big city communities, not necessarily the types that we'll talk about in the suburbs and in the smaller cities of Boise. Some of the cons is going to be the traffic congestion. So you are going to have more traffic in Boise, in most parts of Boise that you live into, just because everybody's commuting into work, especially for events. You're going to have people driving into Boise, or obviously work is the biggest one, but also just some of the amenities. There's some stores, there's some things in Boise, the Boise River, the zoo, that you just can't get to when you're in the suburbs. So people are driving in and out aside from work. And then the pros are going to be everything we talked about, but also the walkability and the access to job opportunities. So most jobs are obviously going to be in the city center. And so if you are somebody who either doesn't have a job and you need to find one in Boise, or you end up working in Boise, that's another big reason people want to live in the city of Boise, is they don't want to commute, especially for those of you who, a lot of you are nurses, or you work in the medical field, or you just have, all the other jobs that are in Boise. Maybe Micron is one of those. The city of Boise is going to be a really close commute, and that's a pro that people want in Boise. But that gives you guys an overview of Boise, all of the big main points. And we're not going to rank Boise because it is the city of Boise, but want you guys to have a comparison of the city of Boise when you think of moving to Boise, and the suburbs, which is where 90% of people end up moving to. Most people don't end up moving to the city of Boise for the most part. They end up moving to the suburbs. So let's dive into the next one. The next and first suburb of Boise is Eagle, Idaho. I often can call this, or other people call this, the California of Idaho, because so many people from California did move to Eagle. Especially a lot of firefighters, retired police officers from California. There's a huge population of them there. Eagle is one of the close suburbs to Boise, so it's connected. It's about 10-15 minutes northwest of the city of Boise in the downtown area. The homes here are going to be a lot nicer. Another thing I referred to Eagle as is the Beverly Hills of the Boise area. So your homes here are going to be $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 more expensive than other suburbs for the same size of house. The other thing that Eagle is going to offer is true luxury. Boise and Eagle are two of the suburbs that have true luxury multi-million-dollar houses in those suburbs. You can find homes in the $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 range in Eagle, but they are going to be a lot smaller. So it is doable if you do have a lower price point, especially as we talk about some of the other major points of Eagle that are really important for people moving here. It has definitely more of a boutique Beverly Hills style of suburbs. So you have a small downtown, there's more small local boutique shops versus national chains that you might find in Meridian or Boise. The culture is going to be wealthier. That's just a part of Eagle. Since I've grown up here, it's always been known as the wealthier part of it. And so when you're in Eagle, you are going to see G-Wagons. I saw Rolls Royce there the other day. You're going to see Lamborghinis. And there are going to be people that do have money in Eagle that may fit the stereotype of people with a lot of money. For the most part, that is lower, and you still get the generalized style of person in the Boise area, which is a extremely welcoming, kind, loving person who's gonna be amazing. That's the number one thing I hear about Boise, is they can't believe how kind and nice the people are here. The other side of Eagle, aside from home prices, is the tax rate. So as you get into Eagle, the tax rate does come down from Boise a little bit, but it's still not the most affordable, anywhere from 0.5% to 1%, depending on which school levies you have in Eagle, Idaho. The population is also smaller, so we're gonna start getting into suburbs where population size is gonna play a big impact on how each of those suburbs are. And in Eagle, the population is right around 35,000, depending. And that means it's one of the smaller suburbs of Boise. Your average commute in Eagle, one of the big pros of Eagle is that you are right next to Boise, you're right next to Meridian, you're right next to Star, and you're right next to the foothills of Boise. So most of your commutes into every major thing you'd want to do in Boise, like the Village or downtown Boise, is pretty much going to be 15 minutes, 20 minutes, depending on which part of Eagle you live in. The other big draw of Eagle, and what I find people want when they choose Eagle as their suburb and why it's a better fit, is it is very scenic. You get the Boise River running through Eagle with the most greenbelt access outside of Boise itself. You get the foothills where you have hiking trails, mountain biking trails, and just the beauty of the foothills and the mountains. And then the other aspect of it is the neighborhood. So with higher price point homes comes the nicest neighborhoods in all of Boise. And some of them aren't an insane price. They are in the $700,000 to $1 million price point, and you're still in one of the top communities, you know, with lakes and ponds for fishing, paddleboarding, waterfront views, with amazing landscaping, like a community like Legacy, where you have 4 times a year they change out all of the flowers so that all year long you have it. So another big draw of Eagle is the mature landscaping, the scenic outdoor feel that you get in Eagle. Some of the cons are obviously the price point of homes. It's way more expensive. The other one can be the lower diversity. Boise as a whole, I guess, is really they're not diverse at all. The city of Boise would be the most diverse. And Eagle is a little bit more peaceful. It is busier than some of the other smaller suburbs that we talk about. So you do have a little bit more traffic in Eagle than some of the other suburbs. But I would say if you are a type of person who you have the budget to live in Eagle and you want a really beautiful view or lifestyle with a lot of outdoor amenities and smaller commute times to the major things while still having kind of a small town feel, then Eagle is going to be something you want to dive more into. There's a lot of communities in Eagle as well that are they're truly in the foothills like Hidden Springs. So Eagle, and for all of these reasons, I'm going to grade Eagle as a B. So I'm going to put it as a B grade for Eagle. The reason it's not an A is purely because of the price point being so high, and there's some other options that can work out, and because there is such a specific type of person, like you really need the outdoors for it to make sense to have that higher price point. Star, Idaho, the quick and essentials on Star. It is one of the most overrated suburbs in my personal opinion, living here, and especially over the last year or so. So let's start with the location first. Star is going to be 35-ish, 30 minutes from downtown Boise. You're gonna be about 10, 15, 20 minutes from Meridian and Eagle, depending on which part of Star you live in. And when I say Meridian, usually that means you're close to Costco, Winco, Fred Meyer, a lot of shops and restaurants that are in Meridian. To the airport, you're 35 to 45 minutes, depending on how traffic is. Although in the next year, that will get shortened because they are finalizing the highway that will connect from Emmett all the way down to the interstate. So that's where Star is located. Now, we'll talk about homes and taxes. So homes are going to be a lot higher priced, and this is one of the first things that I believe it can be overrated. The median home there can be around the 600,000 range. you can find homes still in the 400,000 to 600,000 range that are, your typical 1,500 to 2,000 square foot homes, even some new construction left in that price range. So there still is the opportunity for this, but over the last year, Star has shifted to a suburb of Boise that is much more expensive. And so the price point has gotten higher. The tax rate though, in Star is the lowest in the entire valley at about 0.45%. So there is a pro there. The lifestyle of Star is going to be for those of you who definitely want outdoor living, greenbelt access, the Boise River, foothills. You're not going to have as much as you might in Eagle, Idaho, or Boise, but you do have a lot of that, and it is extremely beautiful. They have parks there, one called Freedom Park that has 2 really big lakes where there's places to paddleboard. There's beaches all around it. You can fish there. They have a diving board off a dock in the middle of the lake. That's really awesome. You have the Boise River. You do have communities out here that are right on the Boise River, some that have private access to the Boise River, which you can't really get anywhere else in the valley. So there is a big pro there. The population is at about 20,000, 22,000, and it has grown extremely fast. Star, for a long time, for about 4 or 5 years, was the #1 suburb that people were moving to when they moved to Boise. And so it grew really fast and went from 10,000 people to 20,000 people. Now, getting into some of the cons, this is where the price point and how fast it grew is where I personally think that it's overrated, because even though it's a small suburb at about 20,000 people, it feels extremely packed, because when you look at a map of Star, all of the houses for the most part are in about a 3-mile square radius. And so everybody got crammed into this small little box, and then you have small streets and the infrastructure didn't catch up. So when you're in Star, it doesn't feel like a small town like you might feel in Kuna or Middleton. And so for me personally, with where the price point is at, where it's so expensive to live in Star, unless you're a person that really wants the Boise River, the foothills, the beauty, the outdoor activities, often doesn't always make sense anymore. It used to, but to pay those price points when you have other suburbs that can match with that style of a small town feel and actually feel like a small town feel. The other thing with Star is that you're crammed in between Middleton and Eagle. And so all of the people driving into Boise or driving into Middleton have to go through Star, and there's only 4 roads. And so everybody gets crammed into the middle. And so one of the big reasons that I can think it can be overrated, even though it is absolutely gorgeous and one of the prettiest suburbs of Boise. The other thing with Star and Eagle is that, and Middleton and Kuna and most of Boise, is that it's really safe. But Star is one of the safer suburbs of Boise. And that's not saying too much, because most of the suburbs in Boise are extremely safe anyway, but it is a safer one. And the other one is that Star starts to get in a really small town feel. So you do start to get in, even though it's packed and I talked about the traffic, it still is a small town feel, and it is going to be a very conservative suburb. So you start to get why a lot of people are moving to Star and Boise is because you guys are political refugees. It's a big reason that people are moving. It's a big reason and a big thing that you guys want to know about each suburb. When you drive through Star, there's a ton of American flags. During the election, there was a ton of Trump signs in the front of yards. And so those are the types of people that you are going to be around, living around in Star, and an important piece. But I'm going to rank Star at a C. So Star goes as a C grade, and the big reason for that is what I talked about, is because I personally think it's a little overrated with those high price points and high traffic rates, even though it's a smaller suburb of Boise. Middleton, Idaho. So Middleton is another really small suburb of Boise. It's also one of the farthest suburbs from Boise. So this is where you start getting into 40, 45 minute, even sometimes hour-long drives into Boise. And one thing to note on that is that a lot of Middleton actually comes up as Caldwell. Even though people who live here or move here, when you move there, you're really moving to Middleton, even though it has Caldwell addresses. So keep that in mind if you do look at houses or look at locations. But you're getting into a longer distance as far as drive times. You do have like Costco and hospitals in Nampa that are, 20, 30 minutes away, depending on what part of Middleton you live in. into Meridian and a lot of the amenities there as far as the village and shops and stuff go, you're at about 20 to 30 minutes depending on where you live. So everything starts getting a lot farther away with Middleton. But that leads into the lifestyle and style of Middleton that I think is important to know about. And that is that it is very conservative and very small town. It is one of the smallest, if not the smallest suburb of Boise, depending on what you count as a suburb, at about 10,000 to 11,000 people. So it's a really small suburb, and you get a true small town feel. So it's a suburb that it is small and it feels small, unlike a Star, Idaho, where it is small, but it doesn't always feel so small. So Middleton, there's only one grocery store, there's Ridley's, there's a dollar store, there's a couple restaurants and, you know, small diners. Everything else you're gonna have to drive into Meridian, Star, Nampa to go get the other big amenities, which is a big indicator of a small town. You do get the Boise River in Middleton still. You are close to a lot of acreage properties, which bleeds into the homes. So if you do want Middleton, Middleton is one of the best suburbs outside of maybe Caldwell, but still one of the best suburbs for those of you who want a home in a community on an acre or more, or even a half acre. It has the best potential for it. And right now, at least as we're making this video in this year, it is still on the more affordable side, although it's shifting towards not being as affordable because people are starting to shift out and look into Middleton because it's affordable outside of Star. So if you want acreage property, if you want conservative, really conservative small town feel, it's a really good option for people as long as you're okay with driving those long distances into the hospital, into the airport, into Boise, into all of the amenities. Even the closest hospital is going to be about 20 minutes away. So you are farther from a lot of those things. The other thing is the school district is pretty good in Middleton. It has its own school district, so there is a pro there. And if you have jobs, you're not retired, some of those commute times can wear on people, and then the lack of retail space. The other thing with Middleton is the tax rate. It's one of the lower ends of the valley at about 0.5 to 0.7% tax rate. And so your taxes are a lot lower in Middleton, which is great. Although there's other small town suburbs like Kuna and Star that also have that lower tax rate. Middleton has an overview for people who want a really small town feel. You're okay with longer commute times. You want more bang for your buck when it comes to the house. You're possibly looking at acreage or just a more affordable home, and you're okay with that small town feel, but you still want the Boise River and access to a lot of BLM land, the Boise River being the more important part of that. That's oftentimes where we see people move, is they really want that small town feel and they don't care about the commute. And I'm gonna give Middleton a B grade for that reason. The commutes are a little bit rough, but it's a B because the price points are low. You can get acreage properties, and it's a really good atmosphere as far as family friendly, God-loving, conservative people that are really welcoming, and you feel like you have a community. Whereas sometimes in the city of Boise or Meridian or even Eagle, sometimes it's just getting so big that you don't get quite as much of that community welcoming feel. Emmett, Idaho. So Emmett it's a suburb of Boise, but it is a lot farther out, but it's still a suburb that a lot of people moving to Boise look into. So first of all, the location. The location is about 50 minutes to an hour into Boise, although that time will get shortened up hopefully this year when they finish up the Highway 16 going to the interstate. So hopefully that cuts it to about 35 to 45 minutes. But that's just into the city of Boise. So Emmett is also about 25-ish minutes into Star, Idaho. So you do have grocery stores there and things and amenities there, and even close into Meridian at about 30-ish minutes, depending on where you live in Emmett. So that's where Emmett's located. It's up in the north side of the valley. It's in its own valley and it's its own county, but it's a big one to know about. So the other big talking points and quick guides on Emmett are, there is a lot of acreage properties out in Emmett as well. You do have an opportunity there to buy property with multiple acres for a decent price. You are going to have a very, very beautiful view. Emmett is absolutely gorgeous. When you drop into Emmett, it's beautiful. There's mountains all around you. You have the Payette River running through town. And it's also going to be a true small town. So when you drive through downtown Emmett, you do feel like you are in a small town in the boonies, and that can definitely have some charm. But for those of you who don't really care for that, Emmett is not going to be on your list of places to dive deeper into in Emmett. And at the end, I'm going to talk about something that is a big reason I have Emmett pretty low on the list. The median home value in Emmett is about $375,000 to $400,000, which we'll talk about in more depth later, but there is still small communities in Emmett. So it's not like you just have acreage properties. You have a lot of old farm towns or farm town houses, or you have a lot of old downtown houses that are available for an affordable price. But there are some builders that have moved out to Emmett, including one, CBH, who a lot of you guys have heard about or will hear about in your process of moving here. And then there's another few builders out in Emmett that are newer, and from what I have seen so far, have been very poor quality. So there is a con there, but you do have the option for your, communities that are your typical spec homes with a pool and a park, and you're closer together. So there is that out in Emmett. The lifestyle is, I mentioned how beautiful Emmett is. It's extremely beautiful. So you're gonna have a lot of outdoor activities. You're gonna have the Payette River running right through Emmett, which is gorgeous. You have a reservoir in Emmett, so you can go up and boat and fish and hang out at the lake really close by. You're gonna have a lot of people who are gonna be hunting, fishing. It's really good for those of you who do want to be outside of the city of Boise, especially as Boise grows and it gets more and more compact in the Treasure Valley. So really great for people who want to be away from the city of Boise and live in a small town, and you're okay with 45-minute drives to Costco and the village and restaurants and things like that. The population of Emmett is about 7,000, to show you that just how small it is. It's smaller than any other of the true suburbs of Boise. You don't have a ton of retail there as well, including grocery stores. It will be a lot more peaceful. Everything in Emmett, it's a small town, but it's also a big town. So it's spread out pretty evenly. And if you want, you can find houses, communities, or land to build on where you are just off on your own and you don't have to worry about very many people in sight. It's just farmland around you. So lots of great opportunities there. When it comes to jobs, obviously the commute time comes into play, but if you're trying to move to Emmett and find a job in Emmett, there's not nearly as many job opportunities there. The tax rate in Emmett isn't anything crazy. It's still at about 0.6%, so similar to a lot of the suburbs in Boise, so not a ton of savings there. And then, like I mentioned at the beginning, the big one that I wanted to talk about is, I talked about the builders and I talked about the price point. Emmett used to be way more affordable, but now it's at the point where you don't really save that much money compared to living in a place like Middleton or even Kuna. And so it doesn't make as much sense to move out to Emmett unless you are a person that really wants that small town feel outside of Boise an hour. So if you're not that person that is really looking for that beauty with the small town feel, I have it ranked as a D. And I have it as a D because the home prices have gotten to a point to where they are higher than it makes sense to commute into Boise. And I have seen probably the most people I know move to Emmett, regret it, and then end up moving into the valley. Even friends that have lived there their whole lives, I hear a lot of people move out to Emmett and they just can't do it after a year. And so it comes with a big warning that if you are not truly dead set on living an hour and having that small town feel, then stay away from Emmett. Now, Nampa, Idaho. So Nampa, this is a fun one because I've gotten some backlash on this, but we'll talk about it. So as a Boise local, I'm gonna give you the location first, and then I'm gonna go into some of the controversy of Nampa that I've gotten on YouTube, and we'll talk about that. But first, the location of Nampa. So Nampa is one of the biggest suburbs of Boise at about 125,000 people in Nampa, so a pretty big suburb. You're about 20 to 30 minutes into the city of Boise, depending on where at in Nampa you live. Sometimes I can get even farther if you live in the outskirts of Nampa. Nampa does have Costco, Target, tons of retail. It has the Idaho Center. There's a hospital in Nampa. So as far as commutes go to those major amenities, you're really usually only 10 minutes to 15 minutes max to get to a lot of those major amenities, which is nice. But to get to like the village in Meridian, which is a popular one, or the airport, you're at about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on where you're at in Nampa. It's also off on the southwest side of the valley. You have Lake Lowell along Nampa, which provides a lot of outdoor activities. There's wildlife centers there for hiking trails. You have a beach at the lake. You can go jet skiing. There's fishing there. So you do have your own access to a reservoir, which is really nice. The homes in Nampa are also on a lot more on the affordable side for Boise, a significant amount. Sometimes they're $100,000 to $150,000, even $300,000 cheaper for the same house in Nampa compared to a place like Star or Eagle or Meridian. And so there's a good opportunity that when I talk about these things that have some controversy and what pushes people away from Nampa a lot of times, if you're okay with those things and it doesn't bother you as much as it bothers most people, then it can be a really great place to either buy your first home or get a lot more home for your money. And so that's a big pro of Nampa. As far as the lifestyle goes, I talked a little bit about the outdoors, but there is a large Spanish, Mexican population in Nampa. So my siblings and my stepfather, they're Mexican. And so I've grown up in Nampa. I've lived in every suburb of Boise, but I've lived in Nampa. And all of my family has friends in Nampa. And so it is there, and that is a large part of the culture in Nampa. The best Mexican food is in Nampa, especially the small hole in the walls that nobody knows about except, like my family has figured it out over time. So if you like Mexican food, there's definitely some good stuff there, but it is a part of the culture. The other side of the culture is Nampa is going to be fairly similar to Meridian, although I'd say on the more conservative side, which is important for you guys moving here. The other thing is that it is more diverse with that Mexican community, so it does give you a different feel than any other suburb, Nampa and Caldwell being the two suburbs that have that. And then the affordable cost of living is absolutely outstanding. Now, let's get into some of the downsides. So the downsides are downtown Nampa and some parts of Nampa are not the safest. There is drug activity, there is gang activity, although when I say that, people are used to being in LA or Seattle or Chicago or wherever it is, and you hear gangs and you think of that type. It's not really that. In my entire life living here, I've only seen 3, maybe 4 times on the news where there was any gang-related shooting. But there is that in the downtown Nampa area, and in and around downtown, it's just not the nicest and safest. And so it's something that I can never really fully explain on video. But when you do drive around the downtown Nampa area in about a 5-ish square mile radius, it's just something you feel. It's a lot more industrial. There's older houses, there's more rundown houses. There's a lot of factories, a cheese factory, the Amazon warehouse. There's a sugar beet factory. So you get a lot more of those industrial buildings, and it just doesn't give you as nice of a feel as the other suburbs of Boise that don't have that. And so it's a big part of living there and something you guys need to know about. The controversial part of this, where I've had another realtor on YouTube react to this, and it's been a running joke in my family, and it's all love here, but I talk about the smell in Nampa from the sugar beet factory. Now, it's not as bad as it used to be. They didn't have it as regulated, and it used to smell a lot of the time. Now it is at least regulated, but the sugar beet factory does smell horrible. And I was called out for saying there is no smell, that it's completely regulated. Well, me and my wife went back to Nampa for a few months while our house was getting finished. And every evening it would smell horrible. And a running joke was, it doesn't smell in Nampa, but it does. And I just was living there just 6 months ago. So that is another con of Nampa, and it is a part of it, and something that some people it's not worth living in that. Now, it is mostly in the northern section of Nampa is where that smell is. The southern section doesn't really have it, and so something to know about. And again, just as an overview, I have Nampa ranked as a C because of the feel, And because of some of the safety concerns in and around the downtown area, the north and far south side of Nampa are perfectly fine. But because of that, I give it a C, and it's not a D because Nampa does have some really amazing opportunities for really affordable homes if you're okay with a little bit longer commutes, either living in the far south side of Nampa or the far north side of Nampa. The tax rates in Nampa will also be a little bit higher than other suburbs because Canyon County does have a higher tax rate. So you're at about 0.6 to 1% depending on where you're at in Nampa. But that's the quick and dirty and simple thing of Nampa. Now, Caldwell, Idaho, right next door to Nampa, Idaho. It's very similar to Nampa, but we'll give you the quick rundown, beginner's guide to Caldwell. So it's right next to Nampa, but it is farther from all of the amenities than Nampa. So to get into Boise, if you're commuting into work or you just want to go downtown, you can have an hour-long drive into downtown Boise. So it is really far from Boise and a lot of the amenities. You're right next to Nampa, you're right next to Middleton. To get into the hospital or Costco's that are in Nampa, you're at about 15 to 20 minutes depending on where you live. To get to the airport, again, you're still at about 45 minutes depending on how bad traffic is. And then to get into the amenities of Meridian, you're going to be about 25-ish minutes to get into Meridian, sometimes 20 minutes depending on where you're at. The homes in Caldwell, again, Caldwell is going to be even a little bit more affordable than a Nampa, Idaho. So has really the most affordable homes in all of Boise. And so that is a great opportunity, again, for those of you who want a either first-time home or you're not as worried about some of these cons that we're going to talk about with Caldwell, and you want a lot more home for the price that you're paying. So lots of great opportunities there. The median home value in Caldwell being about $360,000. The lifestyle of Caldwell, again, Caldwell is going to have a lot higher Mexican Spanish population. So that is in Caldwell and Nampa. And there is a culture of that. Now the downtown Nampa area or downtown Caldwell area is outstanding. They have done a lot in the last 10 years to completely revamp the downtown area, specifically the Indian Creek Plaza of Caldwell. So they have a lot of events every year, the Winter Carnival. There's a creek running through downtown. You have some really good restaurants, some shops down there, including a top-rated restaurant in the country called Mano, which is a Mexican restaurant. So a lot of cool stuff in downtown Caldwell. But outside of that, I'd say most people moving to Caldwell, the lifestyle, it's still conservative, which is going to be the case for most of them, maybe not as conservative. It's going to be a medium-sized town at about 78-ish thousand people in Caldwell. But you're going to have a lot of opportunity in Caldwell for acreage properties or properties that are just outside of town. And so if you're okay with far commutes into Boise, less amenities, then Caldwell can be a big fit. Now, one of the other cons of Caldwell is it is another suburb like Nampa where the safety can be a concern, especially around the downtown Caldwell area, and then just northwest / just north of downtown Caldwell. There is some safety concerns around there. And then again, similar to Nampa, it is something that I just can't explain on video, but when you drive through Caldwell, there's just a feel when you're driving around that it's not quite as nice or welcoming as maybe Meridian or Eagle or Star or Kuna. So that is a part of Caldwell, and that is a reason that I gave Caldwell a C, is similar to how Nampa is. You can almost put them next to each other. They're very similar, but it's great that it's affordable. It's great that it has some awesome opportunities for acreage property, but it has safety concerns and it just doesn't have as nice of a feel. And the best part of Caldwell, I technically consider Middleton, even though it's Caldwell addresses, so I don't really count that as Caldwell. And so this is a suburb that for people who visit and they don't mind what I talked about with the cons of Caldwell, and they want a lot nicer home or a lot more land for a lot more affordable price, that is mostly the best fit for people. And then you're okay with the 45-minute to hour-long commutes. Mountain Home, Idaho. So Mountain Home, we'll make this one a little bit quicker because very few people move here, but it's still something you want to know if you should look into it more or not. It's about 50-ish minutes southeast of Boise, so it is a farther commute. The median home value there is a lot more affordable at just over $300,000, so you can get a lot more home in Mountain Home than you can in the Boise Valley. Taxes are about the same as everything else we've talked about. It is a military town, so there is an Air Force base in Mountain Home, and that is what drives housing prices, the economy, and everything to do with Mountain Home. So you do get a lot more patriotic culture, very close-knit. It is quiet. It's a smaller suburb at about 15, 20,000 people. And so not a ton of traffic. You're off on your own. It's not even really a suburb of Boise, but it is something that is on people's list to at least learn about. And so definitely want you guys to have these major points. Now, the downside to Mountain Home and why I actually have it ranked as an F is because even though it's affordable, even though it's low traffic, you are so far from Boise, you're off on your own, completely isolated. So unlike Middleton or Emmett, at least you're somewhat close to the Treasure Valley and you can get into amenities. But you're just completely isolated. The other thing is it's not nearly as pretty as the valley in Boise. You're off in the desert and it has a lot more wind. There's a lot of wind in Mountain Home compared to the valley. And coming from someone who has family in Wyoming and went to college in Wyoming where it's extremely windy, it's a big reason I love Boise is I got away from a lot of that wind coming back from college and why I never stayed in Wyoming. And so great value, peaceful, isolated, but there is fewer amenities. And so those are the bullet point ones, but I still would rank it as an F. Maybe you can put it as a D if you really do want that isolated feel and you want to be far from Boise. Meridian, Idaho. Now we're getting into some of the top suburbs of Boise, Meridian being probably the #1 suburb that people see or look into when they're moving to Boise, Idaho. I grew up in Meridian. I went to high school in Meridian. I went to elementary school in Meridian. I went to middle school in Meridian. So I've seen the growth and I still have family in Meridian. And so first of all is the location. So Meridian is centralized to the valley, which makes it one of the top suburbs for a reason, and why a lot of things are in Meridian is that anywhere you want to go from Meridian, you're pretty much 15 minutes away. You're 15 minutes to Eagle, Star, Nampa, Kuna, Boise, the airport, depending on where you live in Meridian. But where that can get skewed is if you live in the north side of Meridian, where it takes you a while to get to the interstate. Traffic in Meridian is really bad. I hate when I get caught in traffic driving through Meridian, coming home from Star in the evenings or even in the mornings. You can get stuck at traffic lights, 5 minutes at a time, and there's traffic lights every mile. And so it can be a problem, and that is one of the biggest cons. But before we go into some of the other cons and some of the other big pros of Meridian and what will help you guys know if you should dive into longer videos and more detail on the suburb of Meridian, is that it is a popular suburb because of the centralized location. So you are close to everything, but it also gives you a ton of amenities, the most amenities outside of Boise. So you have the Village in Meridian, which is an amazing outdoor mall. You have shops there, restaurants there, fountains there, events there, a huge park, a really popular spot that everybody in the valley goes. You have restaurants and grocery stores on every corner in Meridian. So no matter where you live in Meridian, you're close to amenities. You have parks all over Meridian. You have Shields in Meridian, which is new to Meridian. And then we're about to have the district at 10 Mile, which will be very similar to the Village at Meridian, but it's supposed to be 4 times the size. And as of now, they're actually paving the roads for it. So it's coming up sooner and sooner and should be here in the next few years. And it's gonna bring some restaurants to Boise that we've never had, some retail shops that we've never had, and gonna be just another thing in Meridian that makes it a top location. It also has some of the best schools in all of the valley. That includes charter schools. So public schools and the charter schools in Meridian are gonna have some of the best outside of some in Boise and Eagle. But for the most part, you have some of the best opportunities for schooling there. The sports are better, the restaurants are better, the amenities are better. The big downside is the traffic and then now kind of the price point. It hasn't gotten too crazy, the median home value being in the 500,000s. So you can still find homes from 400,000 to 500,000 in Meridian, and it's a wonderful home. It's nothing crazy, but the median home value in Meridian is quite a bit higher. You're right there with Star, but you're going to be much more expensive than Kuna, Nampa, Caldwell, Middleton, Emmett, and even Boise in some situations, depending on where you're at in Boise. So definitely a higher price point of a suburb. But I'd say the type of person that should look into Meridian is going to be those of you who want a lot of things nearby. You're okay with the traffic. You don't want to even live 15 to 20 minutes away from all of the amenities like the Village or District or Shields or even just the restaurants. And even those of you who want to be close to the outdoor activities like the Boise River and the foothills, but maybe you can't or don't want to spend the money that it costs to get into Eagle or the parts of Boise that would be close to a lot of the outdoor amenities like hiking, the river, the foothills, the Boise River Greenbelt, all of those things. So it's nice because you can live in Meridian and have all of the amenities, but then only be a 15-minute drive to the Boise River, to the foothills. And so if you're the type of person that wants to be around activity, you don't necessarily want a small town feel, then Meridian is a really good choice at about 150,000 people. And this is where we're getting into some of the top suburbs of Boise. And I ranked it as an A suburb for that reason. Even though I personally hate the traffic, it is a top tier suburb, and there's lots of different aspects of Meridian. South Meridian being one of my favorite parts of Meridian because you don't have as much traffic, but you're still close to a lot of the amenities. And so there's a lot of really great new construction communities coming to the Meridian area in South Meridian specifically that are absolutely outstanding. Now, Kuna, Idaho, this is one that has been overlooked for years, and even growing up in Kuna, it's way down south, so when you look on a map, it looks really far from Boise, but it's actually only 12 minutes to the interstate, so it's not as far as it looks on a map. But Kuna, even growing up, I never went to Kuna, maybe once for a basketball game. There was no reason to go out to Kuna, and up until I moved to Kuna. So keep that in mind. There could be some bias here, but there is also a reason that I chose Kuna. Up until we moved here, I didn't even really come out here even up until a few years ago. And so, first of all, the location, it is south of Boise, off on its own. It looks farther on a map, but you're only 10, 5, 15 minutes from the interstate, depending on where you live. So the commutes aren't as bad as people think, which is a big point to know about. The other thing is that you are 30-ish minutes from downtown Boise when traffic's not bad. That can move to 45 during rush hour if it gets bad. The airport, if you live in certain parts of Kuna, is actually a lot closer than even Meridian because you can take the back roads and you can be there in 20 minutes, 15 minutes. And so that is another big pro of the location of Kuna. The other thing I love about the Kuna location is I said we're off on our own, but it's so spread out. Kuna is so big, and even though Kuna is 40,000 people, it is way less busy and feels like an even smaller town than Star, Idaho. And so you get the really small town feel while having more amenities than Star. And so one of the big pros is that you have so many different streets and spread out that no matter where you're at in Kuna, you'll be community, farm, community, farm, community, farm, and you just feel like you're in a small town, even though there's still a lot of amenities here, and we're gonna talk more about the amenities here in a second. The other thing is that at least right now, the home prices are a lot more affordable than Meridian, Star, Eagle, and Boise. Middleton is pretty much about the same. The only more affordable communities are Nampa and Caldwell, but then you're getting way farther from all of the amenities and things in the Boise area. And so another big pro is right now you can get into Kuna for a lot more affordable price, and we're getting a lot more really cool communities in Kuna, which is great. The other thing is the lifestyle. So small town, of course, still have amenities. So we have a Ridley's and Albertsons. We have Wendy's, McDonald's, Taco Bell, Del Taco, Panda Express, Cafe Rio. We have a Tractor Supply store. We have a D&B Supply, a Buy Mart. There's restaurants downtown that are local. There's chains. So you still get a lot of amenities. There's a good Thai place. There's a farmer's market that's open all 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or not 24 hours a day, but 7 days a week. And so you get a lot of those amenities. The other thing is you get the Indian Creek. So you don't get the Boise River, and I call Indian Creek the Walmart version of the Boise River, but it's still beautiful. So you still have walking paths in the park along Indian Creek. So a lot of great things that come with Kuna. The tax rate is also one of the lowest at about 0.5 to 0.6%. So you do save money there on top of just the home value, which is absolutely outstanding. The cons of Kuna are going to be the commute for some people. So even though it is close to the interstate and some of the amenities, still sometimes people do want to be 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes to a lot of the major amenities. But the biggest reason I see people not choose Kuna is the outdoor amenities and just the beauty. So there's still a lot of trees, and you can see mountains to the south and some foothills, and you have Indian Creek Plaza. But when you compare it to Eagle or Boise or Star, that has a lot of mature neighborhoods, it has the Boise River, the Greenbelt, it has the foothills right in your back door. It's people who really do want those outdoor amenities. Kuna is not on their list. If you could care less about those, or you're okay with driving 30 minutes, 45 minutes to get to the Boise River and the foothills, then Kuna is a great option because of the price point. Now, I rank Kuna as an A because it is a very good price point right now, but almost all of the growth of Boise has now moved to Kuna. So Star used to be where a lot of builders were building homes and where a lot of you guys were moving to. But now it's shifting to Kuna because Star has gotten so expensive that people are starting to see Kuna. And this is where I talked about at the beginning, where this is one of the overlooked suburbs that is starting to become not overlooked. And right now you can get in at a very good price, but there's a lot of growth happening in Kuna. And I'm predicting that over the next couple of years is going to be one of the fastest appreciating markets in the Boise area, because not only do we have all the amenities that we talked about, but there has been 2 data centers that are going to be in Kuna, which is not going to bring a ton of jobs directly, but it brings money into Kuna, and it brings other businesses. So Facebook started their big data center, which then now has brought another company bringing their data center, and it's going to continue down that trend. Costco, hopefully at some point in the next year or 2, is going to start building here in between Kuna and Meridian. So that'll be in Kuna. As of right now, they're building more commercial space in the main area of Kuna, which last I checked was planned to be a grocery outlet, a Panera Bread, some more banks, some more small town shops. And then behind Ridley's and some of the grocery stores, they're building even more now. And so we're getting more amenities to Kuna while still being pretty close to the interstate and not having that traffic. And so there's a lot of appreciation, and I absolutely love the lifestyle out here where you get the small town feel while still having more people. The other side to this is builders are starting to move out here. So if you look on the map, you'll see a ton of homes for sale from new builds in Kuna, and it's just moving even faster. Hubble Homes is adding 2 more communities out in Kuna. Hayden Homes is adding a new community out here. Toll Brothers just had their new one. So there's a lot of communities coming to Kuna. So if you want to learn in more depth and actually see what Kuna would be like, watch this video here where I go through Kuna, drive through communities. We walk into an Ace Hardware and show you guys a really cool surprise and adds on to that lifestyle of Kuna. We go to Indian Creek, we go downtown, and it gives you a true feel of what Kuna would be like. Thank you guys for watching. I hope to meet you in person.